tonight's news edition. The Prime Minister highlights the need for support to Jordan on the Syrian refugee issue, with EU and UN officials visiting Jordan to assess the situation in refugee camps. Syrian government forces intensify attacks on various parts of the country, and the Palestinian Yarmouk camp in Damascus is bombed, with at least 25 people killed in the attack. And the first round of a two-stage referendum in Egypt ends with Egyptians likely voting in favor of a constitution shaped by Islamists but opposed by other groups who fear it will divide the nation. Good evening and welcome to the news at 10. Prime Minister Abdullah Mansour discussed with EU and UN officials the repercussions of the ongoing violence in Syria on civilians and its outcome on Jordan, as it continues to receive an influx of refugees fleeing the country. The Prime Minister received EU Commissioner for International Cooperation, Humanitarian and Crisis Response, Kristalina Georgieva, and the UN High Commissioner for Refugees, Antonio Guterres, who are in Jordan to assess the refugee situation. The meeting dealt with the economic and social impact of the Syrian crisis on the country. As the kingdom continues to open its door to Syrians fleeing the violence, Mansour said the government works on tallying their numbers and determining their location to ensure that they receive the necessary services, including education for their children. The Prime Minister stressed that the situation demands assistance from friendly nations and from international organizations, saying they must help Jordan help the Syrians. In a separate meeting with Foreign Minister Nasser Joudeh, an agreement was reached on establishing a coordination mechanism between various Jordanian government institutions and the different UN relief organizations. According to the EU and UN officials, the aim is to upgrade services and relief aid needed by the Syrian refugees, including medical, educational, and humanitarian needs. Joudeh also echoed His Majesty the King's call for all UN member states to work together to prevent a humanitarian disaster in Syria. He noted that there are currently 250,000 Syrians taking refuge in Jordan, despite the country's own economic hardship. Separately, Joudeh, along with Minister of Planning and International Cooperation Jafar Hassan, held an expanded meeting on the Syrian refugee issue. The meeting involved representatives of the UN organizations in Jordan, the ambassadors of the Group of 8, as well as the visiting EU Commissioner and the UN High Commissioner for Refugees. Discussions focused on identifying the kind of assistance and support that Jordan requires at the present time to be able to continue serving Syrian refugees. It also highlighted the need for emergency relief in view of the cold weather conditions and the economic burden on Jordan as a result of the continuing influx of refugees. Earlier, the UN High Commissioner for Refugees, Antonio Guterres, warned that the situation with the Syrians fleeing from their embattled country may deteriorate in the coming year. Guterres and European Union Commissioner Kristalina Georgieva appealed to the international community to increase the amount of aid for the Syrian refugees, especially as the winter approaches, making life exceedingly difficult. Speaking at a news conference in Amman, Guterres said a joint operational center will be established to deal with the influx of refugees into the country.
We have established an agreement with the government of Jordan that creates a joint operational center to fully coordinate the response to the refugee crisis in Jordan. This center will be chaired by a representative of the government. The vice chair will be UNHCR's representative, and there will be a presence of several government departments and of other UN agencies.
On the ground, violence continues in different parts of Syria and close to the border with Turkey. Syrian warplanes bombed the town of Azaz, close to the Turkish border, destroying at least 5 homes and causing hundreds of people to flee. Elsewhere, and according to opposition activists, at least 25 people were killed when Syrian government forces attacked the town of Halfaya in Hama with warplanes and artillery. Syrian fighter jets also bombed the Palestinian Yarmouk camp in Damascus, killing another 25. An aerial attack on the camp today was the first in the area since the revolt against President Bashar al-Assad erupted last year. Asi Hattab has more.
A Syrian fighter jet's attack on the Palestinian Yarmouk camp in Damascus killed at least 25 people sheltering in a mosque, according to opposition activists, as shown on a video uploaded on the internet. The activists said the deaths resulted from a rocket hitting a mosque in the camp, to which refugees have fled from other fighting in nearby suburbs of Damascus. The video posted on social media website shows bodies and body parts scattered on the stairs of the mosque. The fighting intensified between Palestinians loyal to President Bashar al-Assad and Syrian rebels, with rebels gaining ground inside the camp, forcing Ahmed Jibril, a veteran leader of Damascus-based Palestinian faction that backed Assad, to leave the capital with his son. Moreover, a rebel commander said fighters have seized control of an army's infantry college in northern Aleppo province. The infantry college has been under attack by rebel fighters for at least 10 days, and according to rebels, some 70 government soldiers left their positions to join forces with the rebel fighters. Fighters could be seen loading ammunition into the back of a car said to be traveling toward the front line. A rebel fighter claimed government forces were struck with an RPG, as he pointed at a building said to be the entrance of the infantry college. Asi Hattab for the News at 10.
Meanwhile, French Foreign Minister Laurent Fabius is saying he believes Syrian President Bashar al-Assad will fall soon and that the new opposition coalition has to be supported to prevent extremists taking control. Fabius told RFE radio he thinks the end is near for Bashar al-Assad. In contrast, however, Hezbollah leader Sayyid Hassan Nasrallah is stating that the rebels in Syria cannot emerge victorious from the 21-month-long conflict. Nasrallah, a staunch ally of Syrian president, made it clear that though the situation in Syria is complicated, those who think the armed opposition can settle the situation on the ground are very mistaken. Syrian rebels accuse the Shiite group of sending fighters to Syria to help Assad crush a revolt against his rule. However, Hezbollah denies these accusations. Over to Egypt, and millions of people across the country went to the polling stations for the first stage of a controversial constitutional referendum which has deeply polarized the nation. In the capital Cairo and 9 other districts, residents waited in long lines outside stations as the voting began. President Mohamed Morsi has divided the referendum vote in 2 rounds in an effort to cope with a shortage of judges willing to oversee the voting. Farah Ajlouni has more on the early reactions.
Egyptians awoke this morning to hear that early result of the first round of voting in the country's referendum suggests a narrow win for President Mohamed Morsi's new constitution. Yesterday was the first round of 2-stage referendum on a constitution shaped by Islamists and which opponents say was a reason for deepening division in the nation. Although based on unofficial tallies, the results, if confirmed for this round and repeated in the second stage, may give the Islamist president limited cause for celebration, as it shows the wide rift in Egypt at a time when he needs to build consensus on tough measures to heal a fragile economy. This voter, for one, says she's concerned about voting irregularities.
These results are faked. We said all the people should go and vote.
Meanwhile, tents still dominate Tahrir Square as a prolonged sit-in continues. Opposition members say Morsi has rushed the constitutional drafting process and feel the document may lead to minority rights being undermined, including those of Christians, who make up 10% of the population. This Cairo resident says the early results should not mean anything.
Even if this result is true, it doesn't mean this constitution should pass, because more than 40% of the Egyptian population did not agree on it.
The vote passed off with long queues forming in Cairo and other cities and towns where this round of voting was held. It was set to take place in 2 rounds because judges must oversee the polling, and many of them have boycotted the referendum to voice their opposition. Last night, as polls were closing, Islamists attacked the offices of the liberal opposition Wafd Party newspaper, a party that was part of the National Salvation Front coalition that pushed for a no vote.
Those who attacked the headquarters were supporters of Hazem Abu Ismail. However, I put the responsibility on Dr. Mohammed Morsi, as he is the president of the country and president for all Egyptians. I put all the responsibility on him.
The newspaper offices were attacked with petrol bombs and birdshot as officials began counting votes. If the constitution is approved, a parliamentary election would follow early next year. Opposition leaders say the front could help unite the opposition for that poll after their divided rank have split the vote in previous elections. However, official results are not expected till after the next round on the 22nd. Farah Ajlouni for the News at 10.
Former Israeli Foreign Minister Avigdor Lieberman seems set to campaign for next month's elections after resigning his cabinet post. Today, he formally tendered his resignation as Israel's foreign minister and deputy prime minister to Benjamin Netanyahu during a cabinet meeting, saying he will focus on campaigning for the January election on a joint ticket with Netanyahu. Although Netanyahu's rightist party alliance is expected to easily win the ballot on January 22nd, an opinion poll showed a dip in electoral support after Israeli prosecutors said they would charge Lieberman with breach of trust. Lieberman, who heads the far-right Israel Beituna party, denies any wrongdoing in the case, which involved an Israeli diplomat who was promoted after leaking information to him about a police investigation into his activities. Meanwhile, Netanyahu is assuming the foreign portfolio. Over to Iraq, a series of bombs and blasts exploded in the ethnically mixed city of Kirkuk, killing at least 6 people and wounding 25 others. Kirkuk sits atop some of the world's largest oil reserves and is at the heart of a dispute between the Arab-led central government in Baghdad and ethnic Kurds who run their own autonomous region on the north of the country. And in the eastern Libyan city of Benghazi, 4 policemen were killed when a police compound was attacked. The attack is believed to be linked to the recent detention of 2 men in connection with several assassinations of security officials in the city, including the Benghazi police chief assassination last month. Unknown assailants fired a rocket-propelled grenade at the compound, which houses patrol cars, damaging an office and killing 1 policeman. A gun battle then followed, and 3 of the police reinforcements who arrived at the scene were killed. The governor of Nigeria's volatile Kaduna state and a former national security advisor were among 6 people killed in a helicopter crash in the southern oil-producing Bayelsa state. The officials were returning from a funeral service they had attended yesterday, and the Nigerian Navy confirmed that the helicopter was carrying the VIPs to Port Harcourt, but the cause of the crash was not revealed. Nigerian President Goodluck Jonathan expressed his shock at the incident and ordered an immediate investigation into the fatal crash. Japanese Prime Minister Yoshihiko Noda conceded defeat after the opposition Liberal Democratic Party, the LDP of Japan, won a landslide victory in the general elections. Exit polls showed the LDP winning nearly 300 seats in the parliament's 480-member lower house. Prime Minister Yoshihiko Noda's party, DPJ, won only 65 seats, just over a fifth of its tally in 2009. The LDP win is seen to facilitate a government committed to a pro-nuclear energy policy despite last year's Fukushima disaster. It also leans towards a tough stance in a territorial row with China and a potentially risky prescription for hyper-easy monetary policy and big fiscal spending to beat deflation and tame a strong yen. Head of LDP Shinzo Abe said the victory is more of a vote against the current ruling of DPJ and the Prime Minister than for the LDP. Abe said his party would work hard to regain voters' trust as he seeks to change the constitution and work towards a bigger global security role for Japan. 2 days after the deadly mass shooting at the Sandy Hook Elementary School in Newtown, Connecticut, which left 28 dead, including the gunman, the town residents are still asking why. Memorials have been rapidly building as the town with broken hearts pays tribute to the 12 girls, 8 boys, and 6 adult women who were killed in the shooting on Friday. U.S. President Barack Obama is scheduled to arrive in the town around 7 p.m. Eastern Time to mourn the dead and console the survivors. Obama's appearance at a vigil in the once tranquil Newtown is widely anticipated for clues as to what he meant when he called for meaningful action to prevent such tragedies in the wake of the Friday massacre. School officials say the children who survived will not have to return to the scene of the shooting when schools reopen later this week. Instead, they will attend classes at an unused school in a neighboring Connecticut town 7 miles away. Connecticut Governor Daniel Malloy joined an increasing chorus of voices urging Americans to focus on mental illness and gun control measures as more details emerge about the gunman who attacked the elementary school in Newtown. The governor expressed his appeal on NBC's Meet the Press.
I think that there's certain problems that we have in our society that have to be addressed. We don't treat the mentally ill well. We don't reach out to families that are in trouble particularly well. We allow the assault weapons ban to lapse. There are lots of issues that need to be taken on as a society and have a reasonable discussion about how we help families in trouble, how we make progress in treating folks, how we intervene.
Rio de Janeiro was painted yellow, blue, green, and pink as thousands of people took part in the Color Run race. Participants took off in clean white t-shirts and arrived at the finish line covered in paint. The 3-mile route brought together runners from all ages and sizes who were sprayed with different color paints for every mile they ran. Many were there for their love of running, but the majority came to enjoy themselves with friends and family. Proceeds from the $25 joining fee go to a charity organized from the city where the event is taking place. The Color Run race is a global event with planned stops in Russia, Australia, and various cities across the U.S. Cyclists gathered in the Italian capital of Rome dressed up in Santa costumes to raise money for children charities and to attempt a Guinness World Record. Word spread quickly through the cycling community, and over 300 bikers gathered in Rome's Circus Maximus before setting off on their route around the city's famous landmarks. Christmas shoppers enjoyed the riding spectacle as they watched the group riding across Piazza Venezia past the huge Christmas tree and the Spanish Steps. Riding up the main street towards the Vatican, the Santa cyclists weren't sure if they'd managed a new world record or not, but they were having a great time and wished everyone a very happy Christmas. South American champions Corinthians stunned Chelsea by winning Soccer Club World Cup after Paulo Guerreiro snatched a 69th minute winner. Chelsea, who has been under pressure to win the tournament after becoming the first holder to exit the Champions League at the group stage, missed a string of chances to win the final. Guerreiro's goal sparked wild celebrations by more than 15,000 Brazilian fans who had traveled for the match. Corinthians, who won the first Club World Cup in 2000, caught Chelsea cold when Peru striker Guerreiro headed home from close range after Danilo's shot looped off Cahill's boot. Germany's Sebastian Vettel and Michael Schumacher clinched their 6th successive race of Champions Nations Cup. Vettel and Schumacher, who have 10 Formula One World Championships between them, beat Sebastian Ogier and Romanian Grosjean of Team France 2-0 in the final in Bangkok. 8 teams took part in the event and they raced in a number of different cars, including an Audi, Volkswagen, Lamborghini and Toyota. Tonight, 16 drivers will compete in the individual race of champions. Finally, a look at the weather. Cold and partly cloudy tonight with southwesterly light winds. Frost formation is expected after midnight and in the early morning hours in most regions. A slight rise in temperature is expected tomorrow, but it will continue to be relatively cold with a chance for scattered showers in the evening. The Gulf of Aqaba should expect cool conditions tomorrow with northerly moderate to fresh winds and calm seas. Next are the lows and highs for tonight and tomorrow. To end the news, here's a reminder of our top stories. The Prime Minister highlights the need for support to Jordan on the Syrian refugee issue, with EU and UN officials visiting Jordan to assess the situation in refugee camps. Syrian government forces intensify attacks on various parts of the country, and the Palestinian Yarmouk camp in Damascus is bombed with at least 25 people killed. And the first round of a two-stage referendum in Egypt ends with Egyptians likely voting in favor of a constitution shaped by Islamists but opposed by other groups who fear it will divide the nation. With that, we come to the end of tonight's news. I'm Nancy Khair. Thank you for watching and have a good night.